In 1949, a well-known and successful Western propagandist wrote a book about a dystopian future society. This author had witnessed the destruction that World War II had brought upon the world and the fight for influence that was taking place between the capitalist system of the Western nations, of the US, the British and her colonies, against the communist influence coming from the Soviet Union and the Chinese. This author had worked from 1941 to 1943 for the BBC, spreading Western propaganda. After being in the inner circle, seeing how the governments on both sides lied to each other and even their own people, he foresaw a future where authoritarian governments continuously lie to the population in order to keep them subjugated. If you haven't figured it out yet, I am talking about George Orwell and his famed book 1984. If you haven't read it and are interested in a more detailed breakdown of the book, then you can find a stream I did about it here. The main thing I want to focus on is the four ministries that made up the government, Big Brother, which ruled the country of Oceania. They were the Ministry of Love, the Ministry of Peace, the Ministry of Plenty, and the Ministry of Truth. As to be expected, the purpose of these ministries is the opposite of their names. The Ministry of Peace was tasked with waging war against the other nations of the world, Eurasia and East Asia.
Take cover, everybody! Take cover, everybody! Special bulletin from the Ministry of Peace.
These wars were not meant to be won, but maintained for a long period of time. The Ministry of Plenty was meant to handle the ration distribution and maintaining the country's economy. More importantly, they were meant to keep the population poor, since it was easier to control those in poverty than those who are wealthy. The Ministry of Love was created to control the population through propaganda, brainwashing, intimidation, fear, and torture.
The leader of the underground who betrayed our glorious revolution and would betray Big Brother! Hey! 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 Hey!
They were tasked with preventing the population from turning against Big Brother. The thought police were controlled from this ministry. The final ministry is the Ministry of Truth, which is where the novel's protagonist, Winston Smith, was employed, and the one that I truly want to focus on. The point of the Ministry of Truth was propaganda and manipulating the people of Oceania. They did so by changing around public information to suit the words of Big Brother.
Since the Eurasian offensive has opened in South India, it is impossible that Big Brother predicted this front would remain quiet. We write entire speech, show that through our magnificent espionage system, Big Brother has prior knowledge of all the enemy's plans.
For instance, if the Ministry of Plenty say that the population would receive 5 grams of chocolate, but there was a shortage to only 3 grams, then the Ministry of Truth would change the information to say that the ration was 3 grams. They changed the newspaper, they changed the government records, they changed the public broadcasting, they changed the books. They owned the media. They made people up and wrote them out of existence.
What have you got there, Smith?
This photograph was between the pages of the Gazette.
What photograph?
Jones and Rutherford. They confess to aiding the underground and being in Eurasia during hate week. But here it says...
What are you talking about, Smith? I don't see any photograph. No photograph of the traitors Jones and Rutherford exists, does it?
No.
They did so in order to make it appear as if Big Brother was all-knowing, all-powerful, and always right. Only in this could they manipulate the masses to continue to accept the dictatorship they were under. The Ministry of Truth was a pivotal part of Big Brother. Without it, Big Brother would have been crushed under the weight of their own lies. To summarize, they owned and controlled all the information available to the public. I can tell you this, the Ministry of Truth is alive and well here in Canada. Recently, the Canadian government made changes to the 2018 Public Safety Report on the terrorism threat to Canada, removing any reference to Sikh extremism as a threat to Canada after pressure was put on them by Sikh groups. But in the end, it was our Defense Minister, Harjit Sajjan, that pressured the Minister of Public Safety, Ralph Goodale, to remove the reference. He stated that you cannot condemn an entire religion on the actions of a few. He then said he will continue to stand up for Canadian Sikhs across the country, but not all Canadians. I found this interesting, that he was showing where his true allegiance lay, with the Sikh community and not with Canada as a whole. This happened after the members of the Liberal Party went on a spree on Twitter in which they condemned white nationalism and white supremacy. Recently, our Minister of Foreign Affairs, Chrystia Freeland, appeared before the United Nations and said that neo-Nazism is the gravest threat facing the world, and by extension, Canada. Being called a Nazi has been the main insult thrown by the left toward members of the right. If they are not calling everyone white supremacists or Nazis, they are saying that right-wing extremism is the biggest threat to Canada, another euphemism for white supremacy used by the left. The Liberals have attacked every white Canadian and their ancestor. This has been something they have done for a long time by condemning Canada as a racist country and the people who live here. They committed the exact act they said they stood against, attacking an entire group of people based on their skin or religion. By changing the 2018 Public Safety Report, they have engaged in an act of changing history, changing government documents, thereby putting the safety of all Canadians at risk for the sake of pandering and playing partisan politics. This was the action of the Ministry of Truth in Orwell's novel 1984. There are authoritarians on both sides of the political aisle, but lately it has been the left that has been steadily moving toward dictatorship. Trudeau has proven himself to be authoritarian, so has Emmanuel Macron, so has Angela Merkel, and many other left-wing governments around the world. Another part of 1984 was the population could not speak freely. Any wrong think or wrong speak would see them arrested by the thought police. Recently, Trudeau has spoken about the need to limit speech on social media in order to, quote, keep our communities safe, end quote.
I think we've seen that the impact that social media, particularly around hate speech, around intolerance, around incitement to violence, is a real problem in our communities. We need to always walk that careful balance between respecting rights to free expression and free speech and keeping our communities safe. And unfortunately, what happens in the virtual world sometimes spills over into the real world. And I think it's really important that social media companies understand their responsibility to shape and to ensure that our communities stay safe for everyone.
This is on top of him giving out $600 million to buy off the news media, thereby controlling their content. This will lead to more interviews such as this.
If you could do any other job and you have to answer, what would it be?
I'd be a school teacher.
I knew you were going to say that. Last book you've read or the book you're reading? What kind of music are you listening to right now? If you have time. Or podcasts?
No.
Do you have moments where you wake up and you think, I just want to hang out with the kids today?
He will control the news, control social media, and control what you can say and what you can hear, just like the Ministry of Truth. This is him bringing the thought police into reality, which he has also done with other speech laws such as C-16. As the popular saying goes, 1984 was supposed to be a warning, not a blueprint. Nobody wants to live in that dystopian world, but Justin Trudeau wants to put us on an express lane to that future. Which do you want to be, a free man or a slave? The choice is yours. It just depends on how much suppression you are willing to put up with.